You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, thanks for coming back to our podcast, Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. This is episode number 385, and I'm Mighty Blue, or Steve Adams. While I remember, we're looking for suggestions for our 400th episode. I've had several emails with suggestions, so if you've got a good idea, let me know at steve@hikingradionetwork.com. Today we're going to meet Adrienne Washney, or Mother Hen. One of our listeners, Susie Milner, has suggested I reach out to Adrienne sometime last year. I think we had a bit of a communications glitch, which means it was my fault, and it all went quiet for about 6 months when I reached out to her again. This time I didn't drop the ball, so Adrienne will be telling her story shortly. Today's going to be a bit of a hybrid show as I'm speaking with 5 of our class of 23 members. Things are getting critical out there, so I wanted to touch base with many of them this week, some of whom are going on, while some of them are at home and not like to get back out there. So, with 5 extra interviews, we'll table the next instalment of Then the How Came until next week. I've also got a very spooky moment I caught on microphone that I'm going to share with you all as well. So let's get on and hear from Adrienne Washney, or Mother Hen. Our guest today hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2022. This is Adrienne Washney. Hey Adrienne, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for doing this now, because you're going away for a couple of days, aren't you? So I'm just getting you just before you go away, apparently.
Yes, I'm gonna go try and do another hike in Colorado.
Are you doing the Colorado Trail?
Yeah,
Doing the whole thing?
I'm gonna try to do the whole thing, and I'll just take it day by day. Same thing as I did on the Appalachian Trail. Section by section is how it goes in there. It's all divided into sections. We
did talk about that the other day. When you did the Appalachian Trail, is that how you approached it when you got out there? Because, it's an unrealistic goal to believe you're going to be able to walk 2,200 miles generally. Yes. So what were you looking to do when you got out there?
So I approached it that I would do one state at a time. So
right.
My first goal was
West
to finish
Virginia was
Georgia.
fun then, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, Virginia.
Virginia. I mean, West Virginia was fun. It was only 4 miles. So that was great.
Oh, okay, 4 miles. Yeah. So every time that was one of my goals, the 100-mile markers and the states. And you're right. I could not think about hiking 2,000 miles. That was just too much.
Once again, something we didn't talk about the other day. So if you had that approach, when did it change? And when did you suddenly think, I'm going to make it? Because there is a moment, isn't there?
Yeah, I think probably when we got to Maine, I knew I was going to make it. I was there at the last state, so.
You're in 14 states, yeah. Well, let's go back anyway, because you did it in quite an interesting way, I think, which I'm pretty sure is going to appeal to a lot of people. I've not even heard about somebody doing it this way, but we're going to come to that in a moment. What was it that got you interested in doing the Appalachian Trail in the first place? Because you are a middle-aged woman, and this is more of a demographic that's starting to do it more and more. How were you able to do that in your life and make that space in your life to do it?
So I first became interested of one of my high school classmates' his daughter. She did the Pacific Crest Trail.
All right.
And so I followed her on Instagram while she did that. And then I had another friend who was interested in the Appalachian Trail. So I just started researching because I had no idea, to be honest and embarrassed, that it started in Georgia, and which is where I live there.
And, right, even better.
Yeah, I just didn't know. So I just started researching and basics, looking how far the trail went, and so I guess you could call me retired. My last child, she graduated from high school in 2013, and I have the time to do it. So my whole calendar was open.
It's funny, isn't it? That, there are times in our life we just can't do this. Life is holding us up to do this selfish thing. We've talked about this in the past, but it is a selfish thing to go away and do this. And I think all of us those of us who are lucky enough to have done it should admit that that's what it is. You're doing something for you and purely for you. But it grabs a hold of you, doesn't it? Because you must have done research and so on. And you said you listened to Grandma Gatewood's book. Is that what really sort of tipped you over the edge? You thought, well, this is something I really must do.
Yeah, I did listen to her book, and since I am definitely I'm under 65, so I listened to her. Was 64, I think, when she did it, and she was successful. I think 2 or 3 times she hiked the trail,
yeah.
And then the whole adventure sounded like a lot of fun. So I didn't think too much about the difficulties or I'm not really, some of those things people will say, oh no, I'll never do that because I will not go to the bathroom outside, or I'm not going to go that long without a shower. That stuff was minor. Didn't bother me.
Becomes a bonus though, didn't it? Actually not having a shower only doing it once every 5 days is great. I was actually always surprised how much the women embraced the feral nature of being on a trail. Did you embrace that as well?
Let's see, embrace it. I was okay with it. So I did. I knew that most younger women, they said, yep, we're not wearing deodorant. Well, I brought myself a small deodorant, and I wore it for most of the time. And I just thought, yeah, I don't want to smell all the time as bad as I could. So that is one of the things I brought that most people don't. But it didn't bother me to be dirty. In fact, I took several pictures of myself dirty.
I bumped into one guy in 2014. We were just chatting away and that. And he said, meet my girlfriend today. She's coming. I haven't seen her for a long time. I said, well, when did you say you better go and make sure you get a shower? He said, yeah, I haven't been off the trail for 27 days.
Oh my gosh, that is pretty dirty.
I said, you need at least 3 showers before you see her in that case.
Yeah, and apparently hikers actually get a smell to them, even if they're showering.
Oh, yeah.
More than one person told me, oh yeah, you smell. So
it's when you get into cars and people wind the windows down. Yeah,
yes.
you know you smell then. And how much overnight backpacking had you done before you got to Springer?
Okay, so when I was 18 and 19, I did 2 week-long trips in California at the one of the big parks there, not Yosemite, but I did 2 of those. Kings Canyon National Park.
Nice.
I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
So that's when I first did backpacking. And then overnight trips, we really just started in January, my husband and I, to try it out. So yeah, this is what I want to talk about, because I'll talk about it in a second. I just want to ask you first how you worked out your gear, because there's lists in lots of different places, and there's YouTubes and different people have different versions. How did you work out what you needed? And did you work out what you needed, or did you learn you needed more stuff on the trail? So I found Homemade Wanderlust first.
Dixie, yeah.
She's pretty popular. And
Yes.
I actually sat down and watched her video that she conglomerated. It was about a 3-hour video. And it went through every single piece of gear that you need. So I had a little book. I wrote it down, all her different ideas. And then I started looking at different websites that I found. One thing leads you to another. And so...
yeah, on any subject.
Yeah. So that's how I found, started getting the gear. And I started buying little things. Like I bought a cook pot. And I bought a different kind of stove that I would not recommend. It's the one that has little chemical square, and you light a fire, and just really small things I started with until I decided, yes, I am going to hike this. So that's when I started buying the major gear.
Oh, right. So you actually hadn't decided by then, right? But tell us then, you had your gear ready and you got to Springer. Were you intimidated when you first started, or did you actually feel quite prepared? Or was that part of your preparation? Because we're going to share now what you actually did, which I think is an interesting way to look at it. What did you do to start? When did you actually start?
Officially, I started in January, but I wanted to back up a little and say that I did go on 2 overnight hikes with 3 other friends. Mm-hmm. And one was over the 4th of July weekend the previous year in 2021. Uh-huh. And then the first one ever was April 2021. And I think they were both 2 nights. And that is really when I got to see how it all sort of worked. Got to learn that I some rookie mistakes that I made, like I didn't zip up my tent and I got mosquitoes in my tent, and my friend said, "Oh, that's a rookie mistake." So I got a little experience then. Then how I started, I decided we would start in January, first weekend in January, and go out and hike just a small hike on the weekend. So we started at Springer and we hiked 4 miles.
By we, who do you mean by we?
My husband and I.
Right.
So we got to the Three Forks campsite. Right. I set up my tent while my husband took it's kind of a complicated thing. Before we started, we drove to Three Forks, dropped off his bicycle, drove back to Springer, and started the hike. So then when we got to Three Forks, he took his bicycle, rode it all the way back to Springer, and brought back the truck.
Oh my gosh.
So we did.
Hang on, how far is that by road miles? I mean,
I don't think it's that many miles, but I'll tell you, when he got back, he said that was hard. A lot of it was downhill, but a lot of it was uphill, and he just had a regular mountain bike.
Right.
So that was our first weekend, and then we just kept doing almost every weekend. I calculated 9 actual hikes. So maybe four weekends, 5
And how many miles was that? How many miles did you do then?
So it turned out to be 89 miles.
Oh, right. So it's not insubstantial. So you actually got out of Georgia then, didn't you?
Yes. I got out of Georgia because that was my goal. I want to finish Georgia before I leave in March.
And I thought you told me before that the plan of going back on the bike didn't actually work out so well. So he just went to the end and walked back towards you. Is that right?
Yes. So it was a variety. Sometimes he'd walk back to the end, walk to where I was, and then we would both walk.
And starting in January, you probably expected, as you live in Georgia, pretty cold weather. What was it like?
So it was initially just cold, and then 2 times going in on the weekend, we had snow. So I was able to hike in the snow, which I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was so nice. It was, the trail was soft.
It's pretty. It's slippery though, isn't it? Slippery though.
It actually was slippery sometimes, but it was also a little softer. So when I inevitably fell, it wasn't that hard, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So, and it was absolutely gorgeous.
And so this is why I thought this would appeal to some people, apart from the bike ride bit, but getting to treat it as just weekend hikes to start with. So you did your shakedown hikes actually as part of your thru hike as well. Did that experience prepare you better for when you got on the trail full time, or were you learning, still making those rookie mistakes, I guess, and ironing things out? And could you tell us what you sorted out, or did you think what you had was working for you?
So, yeah, I would say that what I had was working for me. I learned, exactly what clothes I needed if it was going to be snowing. I knew what I had was going to work. I had gloves, a hat, and something for my neck. And so I knew what I was using was going to work. And I would say the cooking part was something that I was still learning as I was going out, because I I think it was trying to remember which, oh no, that happened on another hike, but I have to tell you, when I was with my friends, we got to the shelter and they went off and found their own campsites, and I went to the shelter to cook.
Mm-hmm.
And this man there was talking about a bear that he saw. So, he's like, we gotta, there might be a bear here. And it got me really nervous. So I set up my stove, put my pot on there to boil my water, and pretty soon I smell this plastic. So I'm like, oh man, I forgot to take the plastic off the bottom of my pot.
I've done exactly that as well.
Yeah. So I, pulled it off the stove with it's stringy, and I had to clean my stove. So that was a mistake that I made, and I had to buy a new pot actually, because they don't sell a replacement plastic part for that.
No, I know. Yeah. Oh dear. But you know what? None of us we all had to set foot on trail for the first time we set foot on trail. So none of us really know what we're doing anyway. You only learn that by doing the hours. You've now done 2,000 miles of that trail. So, you learn, you work those kinks out as you go along. And I personally think that's a great part of how you learn the trail. You just do it. And then you work out the bits that do work and don't work. So you were better experienced because when you got on the trail full time, and you started full time, you said 15th of March, was it?
Yes,
15th of March?
Right.
Yeah. So how different was that experience? Because it's great to go away for 2 days for a weekend and go back home and you get into your shower and you eat your proper food and so on. But once you went out on trail for more than 2 days, 3 days, and then a week and then 2 weeks and 4 weeks, whatever, how was that new experience? Was it more enjoyable? Because it sometimes isn't for people.
Yes, it was. It was very enjoyable. I was really excited. So I get to the shelter the first night with a group of people that they've been hiking now really for a couple weeks, and I'm just getting to where they are, and everybody is so happy, and they're talking about what they're going through or what is happening with them. Yeah. And I actually had a hard time sleeping for about a week at least, because I would go to bed and I was so wired up, from being excited about being on the trail and being self-conscious to be sleeping in a shelter next to other people. Did you find that an easy thing to get over though eventually? Yes, eventually I did.
It's not easy to start with though, is it? It's so alien, isn't it? Just be lying in a shelter with 8 other people or 10 other people laid out, just scrooching up against each other, basically, aren't they?
Yeah, and you're worried I was worried I might wake them up. I was worried I might snore. And then I was also in the shelter initially because I didn't want to set up my tent yet. I was a little nervous about doing that. Like, I don't know, how am I going to find a spot? How will I know it's the right place? So it took me a while before I set my tent up. Well,
would you ever do it? Would you ever do this without a tent and just go shelter to shelter? I wouldn't personally.
I actually grew to love my tent.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I know what you mean. Yeah. It feels like a home, doesn't it? Yes. It isn't your home, but it feels like that home when you're out there. And you found yourself in a small tramley. How did that happen? Because hiking the same pace as somebody else is quite a difficult thing to do in many ways. Did you find people that you just got on well with, or you just found that some people who walked the same sort of pace as you?
So I did, I don't know exactly where, the Standing Bear Hostel. Oh, no, well, just outside the Smokies. Yes. Yes, so, great place. Yeah. Awesome place. Well, at Standing Bear Hostel, that was the first hostel I stayed at. I really was totally not ignorant, but I really didn't know much about hostels. So anyway, I stayed at that one. And while I was there, I met a few people. 2 of them were older men that were sitting at a picnic table looking very serious. Later on, I joked that they looked so grumpy. They were so serious. They're sitting there with their planning books and planning their hike. So anyway, that's when I first saw them. And then as I hiked on by myself, I found that I kept running into those 2 gentlemen. One is Sunnyside and the other was Bowie Critter. So
Great name.
we all were at a shelter one night and we sat at the picnic table and they started talking to me about how to use the paper guide. And then we just had great conversation. And then I had dehydrated a lot of my own food, so they were asking me about that. So we kept running into each other for about 3 more shelters. Then we had a big snow in Tennessee, and we ended up together at Nature's Inn Hostel.
Mm-hmm.
So there, we all sat around the fire and talked, and they're just funny, interesting people. And they are about my age, a little younger. So after we left that hostel, that is when we actually started hiking together that day in the snow.
Nice.
So, and
Did you stay with them for most of the way from then?
Yes. So I hiked up till 1,100 miles with Bowie Critter, and he had to get off trail.
Right.
And then Sonny, we hiked the entire rest of the trail together.
Right. Must have been sad when he had to get off the trail, not only for him, but for you guys as well, because you do grow quite close in those times. Did you find it kind of emotional when losing one of your hiking partners?
Yes, I did.
Did
we
you?
were very sad. Oh, yeah. And we have to laugh about it. So he got off at where the ice cream halfway challenge is.
Oh, yeah. Pine Grove Furnace, yeah.
Yeah, Pine Grove Furnace. So he had been feeling bad and he just kept trucking along. He didn't know what was wrong. And finally he decided I better get off trail. So he tried to do the half-gallon challenge and he just couldn't. And
if you're not feeling well, trust me, half a gallon of ice cream is not a great idea, is it? I mean,
no,
thinking about it.
Well, another funny thing is that we decided we would go into training and for the half-gallon ice cream challenge. So every time we came somewhere, we would buy ice cream because we were in training.
Right,
you know, you can't do a
you
competition.
convince yourself anything, can't you?
So anyway, I think we had our first fantastic ice cream in Brushy Mountain Outpost.
Oh my gosh! No, but it's funny actually. You know, I didn't do it the second time because I was horrendously ill. I had to take a day off trail after I did it the first time. So I thought, there's no way I'm going to do that again. You know, I think it's a great thing to do. I'm glad I've done it once. Wouldn't want to do it again. But you lost Bowie Critter, and so you then hiked on. But before you actually, I think you were I'm not sure when this actually happened. You told me a very funny story about this, an interesting, what you called a bear encounter, but it kind of wasn't, was it? Tell us about that.
So this was over at Seiler Bald Shelter, which is about half a mile off the trail.
Yes,
and
I know it well.
Had I know it was half a mile, I mean, I just didn't register, right? So I'm like, I'm going to the shelter. So nobody else was there. And I had a time trying to find a place to put my tent because I saw footprints. I said, oh no, that might be a bear footprint. I better not put it here. So anyway, I found a place to set my tent up and I went to bed that night. And the first thing that happened was a big pack of coyotes it felt like, 50 feet away, howling and barking. And that scared me to death.
Yeah, it's not a good sound, is it?
No, I told you before, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do when you have coyotes. Like, how do you defend yourself against coyotes? But so anyway, they went away finally. I went to sleep, and then I woke up with the sound of footsteps outside my tent. And I said, oh my gosh, that's a bear. That's a bear out there. And so I was really quiet. I was laying down and my heart was pounding out of my chest. I was so scared. So finally I said, I got to sit up and make some noise. My family's going to kill me if I get killed by a bear. I cannot, this cannot happen. So I sat up and I kept listening.
You should think about what you just said, by the way. My family's going to kill me if I get killed by a bear, but okay.
They would be so angry if I was killed by a bear.
Yeah, that's better, yeah.
Because my husband's afraid of bears. He would have went, see? I told you I shouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
So he couldn't have told me. Anyway. So I just sat there for a while listening, and it sounded like it went away, and then it came back. And then finally, I figured out it was not a bear. It was my tent flap just flapping it was about 3 times every time. Flap, 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 which sounds like footprints.
Oh, dear.
So
I wouldn't have been able to go back to sleep, I tell you. But, you're relieved, but oh my gosh, no. I don't like noises outside my tent either.
And that's like a rookie mistake, right? So I said...
It's not a rookie mistake. It can happen to anybody. If it sounds like a bear, assume it's a bear, then they hope for the worst, hope for the best, rather. Yeah.
Right. Well, I should have, not been lazy and staked my flap, my tent rain fly. I should have staked it out. I mean, that night I said, I am not staying at a shelter again by myself. I was just terrified. So, yeah.
Now, you had a few health issues and injuries in the Smokies. Tell us what happened, because you had a few things happen to you. I've got a list. I'm not sure this is the whole list, but it seems a lot of things happened to you in the Smokies. So tell us what happened.
Yes. So in the Smokies, the temperature was down to about 30, and in the mornings it was about 20 degrees. And I started having various pains and things going wrong with my body. My back was having little spasms, and my shoulder was hurting from my strap. I think I had my backpack uneven. And then I broke a crown, and then my stomach was giving me, it was unhappy.
Yes.
So I just, I woke up and I started hiking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm falling apart, and I don't even think am I even 200 miles in?
Yeah.
So my husband came and met me and let me regroup. We regrouped in a hotel for a couple days up there on the right at that one parking lot outside the Smokies. So I was able to regroup, just take some Advil, relax, have some fun in Gatlinburg, and then get back on the trail. And then the other problems that I had later was back spasms. So I'd be walking, and all of a sudden my whole back would just tense up for about 5 seconds.
Nasty.
And then it would relax. And then it happened like every 10 minutes. So what I did with that was I finally made the decision to drive back home, go to the chiropractor, and have a massage. So my husband he's like, are you serious? You want me to drive all the way back home? I said, yes.
That's correct.
I don't know a chiropractor here, because we were in Damascus at that time.
Oh, right. Oh, you're really well way up there then, yeah.
So my family went and stayed at Crazy Larry's, and we drove back home, and it was a 5-hour drive each way. And after that, the problem went away. I upped my electrolytes, and
that'll often do it. Yeah,
yes.
That'll often do it.
And
yeah.
So I was great after that, which was a relief.
So you kept going, and you got to the 100-mile wilderness, but you started slowing down. Why did you do that?
Yes, because you're having such a good time on the trail. Initially, Sonny said he's like trying to plan everything. Okay, if we hike 20 miles a day in the 100-mile wilderness, we can get done in 5 days. We can do that. I know we can do that because we've hiked 20-mile days before. So I'm like, okay, yeah. But by the time we got to the 100-mile wilderness, it was a little sad because we'd been having such a great time. We didn't want to rush through the 100-mile wilderness. We wanted to enjoy the last 100 miles.
Yeah.
So
you didn't even do that, did you?
No.
That's the funny bit. You actually left the trail and went to a wedding with how many miles to go?
Yes. I think I had 84 miles to go.
Dear, I would have. I think at that stage, if I knew I was going to be getting off for a wedding, I think I would have actually hurried up and got the 84 miles done, because it's probably less than a week, isn't it? At that stage,
Yeah.
probably about 4 or 5 days. But you actually went away for a wedding. You were away for 5 days, and your hiking partner stayed at Monson for all 5 days. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, he did.
Wow,
We thought about rushing
that's a good
through.
teammate. But that's a good teammate, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
We thought about rushing through, but we didn't want it to end. So we said, nope, we're not going to rush through, because we would have had to summit, and I would have had to leave, and that would have been the end of the trail, the end of the adventure.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
Sunny and I talked about it after I finally decided, okay, the right thing to do is to go to the wedding. It was my son's wedding, and even though he gave me a pass, he told me
he would have hit you with that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, he
you
probably
didn't turn up
would
to my
have.
wedding. Yes.
Yes.
Rightly so, by the way.
Yeah. But he said, you don't have to go to the wedding, Mom. I know you're almost done. Don't feel obligated. And I'm like, okay. But
What did your husband think about this at this time?
Oh, no. My husband said, what? You don't want to go to the wedding? I'm going to the wedding. And I'm like, but
funny.
I'll only have, I won't even have 100 miles left. So, but I eventually knew the right thing to do was to go to the wedding, and I had a great time. And Sunny and I kept talking about it. I said, Sunny, you might get to the hostel, Shaw's. So he stayed at Shaw's for a whole week. But I said, you might get ants in your pants, and you might not want to wait for me. So if you want to go ahead, you go right ahead. And he just said, no, we've hiked all this way together. I want to finish with you. So
That's a good feeling. It's a great feeling that someone's got your back, which is, I'm sure that must have given your husband some comfort that somebody did have your back. You were safe on the trail.
Yes.
And your Katahdin day, though, didn't actually finish your trip, did it?
No, it didn't.
So what did you do there then?
So we were having problems. The weather was having problems, actually. It had been high winds up in Katahdin, and we actually had friends who attempted to summit, and they had to turn back around, right? Wherever that metal pole is that you pull yourself up on. So the winds were high, it was raining. And so there was one clear day coming up, and I believe it was a Sunday. So we got to Abel Bridge, and we were going to go to the campsite. And lo and behold, there's these people we've been seeing off and on. We hiked with this woman a little bit. Her name was Sparkplug. So her husband was hiking along with her, or he was supporting her the whole way. So anyway, we ran into that couple at the campground, and Sunny came up with this great idea. We had a pass to get into the park.
Sure.
They had a vehicle, and they needed to summit, and we had one clear day to summit. So we decided that we would all go up there together, use my parking pass, use this guy's vehicle, and go ahead and summit.
Win-win, yeah, quite right too.
Yes, and if you didn't have that parking pass, you have to go all the way to the end of the line, and if whatever the limit is reached, they'll say, sorry, you can't come into the park today.
Yeah.
So we had the pass, and that was thanks to another hiker who allowed us to get in on her group campsite.
So you summited Katahdin on a beautiful day and then had to walk back to Abel Bridge.
Yes. Well,
you didn't do all that in one day, did you?
No. What we did was, after we summited, we got a ride to the Katahdin campground, and we spent the night there. Then my husband came and picked us up and brought us back to that place where you start the summit, that parking lot. Where you check in and everything.
Yeah, you check in, get your card.
So that we started there, and we had to hike back 10 miles to Abel Bridge. And I tell you, it was definitely not as exciting as
Really?
the day before. No.
How do you feel though when you the summit is still a fantastic achievement? It's what you've been dreaming of, obviously, for some time while you've been on the trail. And that it didn't take anything away from it. That wasn't the end, though, did it?
No.
It's an awesome day.
It gave you some time, the 10 miles, to just reflect on summiting and talk about it.
Yeah.
And to enjoy the beauty in a more relaxed way. You know, it's fall there. The trees were turning colors, and it gave Sonny and I just time to relax and reflect on what we just accomplished. So,
did you get everything that you wanted out of the trail?
I think I did. I had a great adventure, and I got to, I would say I was living free, without the burdens of what we have, you know, in our day-to-day life.
Sure.
And just be independent and live simply. So I absolutely loved it.
Did it impact you as a person when you got back home? Did it change your life when you got back home in any way? Did you just slip back into regular life?
Well, I have tried to start getting rid of clothing and things that I don't wear, and I'm more appreciative. I'm appreciative of what I do have.
Yes.
But you know, you just see that. I mean, I do know that I can live simply and be really happy with that.
Now, I'm going to finish up with two things you told me the other day. It made me laugh, actually. I asked you to nail down a life lesson that the trail gave you. Do you remember what you said to me?
A life lesson. No, I don't remember what I said to you.
It's the second one makes it funny. You said, I can do hard things.
Oh, yes.
And you know what? And that's a really important thing for people to know, because a lot of people take on tasks not knowing whether they can finish it. In your case, you know, in all our cases, when we start, we have no idea whether we can finish. But man, we did it, which is great. We can do hard things. But then you said, which is exactly how I feel, by the way, you said you recently realized something about yourself. You said that you don't want to know how hard it is.
Yes.
Because if you had known, you would never have gone.
That is very true.
So to do hard things and never would have gone, as you know how hard it was. There's a bit of a mismatch there, isn't there?
Yes. I did realize that, and it is just the other day I said, I go into things not knowing exactly what I'm getting into. To give an example, my sunny side, he started talking about going in New Hampshire. I forgot what state we're in, but I mean, every day he'd bring it up. Okay, I got to get this back. I have to have this sleeping bag. I have to have my coat. And I'm like, okay, we got that. You know we got, this is the stuff. I wasn't even worried about it. I'm like, what? You know, it'll be cold. Okay. And then people would talk about Mahoosuc Notch. And I couldn't vision it. I couldn't get a vision on what they were talking about. And, just, you know, take it like it's a playground. Take your time. Like, whatever. I can't imagine what the place is like. And then I got there, and those boulders, you know, the size of a room.
Awesome. That's a real adventure. That in itself is, I think that would be a great day hike, wouldn't it? A great day hike to just drive into that place. There's a 2 or 3 mile walk up. You can go through the notch and then up Old Speck and down again, which is a long old hike as well.
Yes.
Well, look, you know, I'm so glad you agreed to come on the show. I think you've embodied what the trail's all about, and I love your idea about starting out that way. Just do weekend hikes. It's convenient. Obviously, you lived in Georgia.
Yes.
I just thank you for coming on the show.
Well, I really enjoyed it. It's, you know, I will always like to talk about the trail.
Of
it's
course.
fun to have someone who will listen and can relate. So,
as I said in this week's show, they'll listen to you for about 2 or 3 weeks after you finish. Then they want you to talk about something else.
Right. You know, their eyes glaze over. And even, I mean, like, sorry to bring this up, but this is related to the trail.
Oh, of course, yeah. You have to. It's a bit of a precursor, yeah. Well, okay. Well, lovely to talk to you, and enjoy your hike in Colorado. I'm sure you will.
Thank you. I hope so. I hope it's. I've tried to prepare a little more than I did for the AT as far as terrain, but I'm going to take it one day at a time.
Yeah. Well, have a good time. Have a good time, okay?
Okay, and thank you so much.
Okay. Cheers then.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I love the way she incorporated shakedowns into her thru hike. Starting off early, getting accustomed to the trail and testing out her gear while making her way through Georgia is a really smart move. Mind you, the back end of her hike in Maine, when she had just over 80 miles to go, should have been a no-brainer. When she said it was her son's wedding, I thought, well, that ain't going to end well. She had to go, of course, but it must have been strange to get off, then back on after time at home with family and friends with so little left to do. Still, she did it, and I thought she sounded really reflective at the end, as if she was thinking back to the trail as she spoke. It does get you reflective, especially when you've finished after all the tough times. Awesome. Now our Mighty Blue class of 23. First up, we hear from someone who I recorded a couple of weeks ago, and that interview was on last week's show. When we left Joanne Flagg, she was in Monson, about to head into the 100-mile wilderness with Katahdin to follow earlier this week. I caught up with her on Wednesday morning. Here's Joanne.
Good morning, Steve.
Hey, Joanne, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I bet you're very, very good, because last time we spoke, which was only it was on last week's show, but actually we spoke, I think, the week before that. You were in Monson, about to take quite a bit of time on the 100-mile wilderness and then do Katahdin, all of which you've now done. So let's go through it. How was the 100-mile wilderness?
It was awesome.
Yes.
I couldn't have asked for anything better. It's my favorite part so far.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Were you by yourself?
Yeah, the trail, I was. The trail was beautiful. I know the southbounders earlier on had so much rain and found it so hard, but it had dried out, and there was the beautiful peaks in the beginning, Moxie Bald, and some great sights, and then it leveled out and was just rolling and beautiful trail, and I took my time. It was wonderful.
Do you camp by any of the lakes? Because I did that a couple of times, and it's just so magnificent to be down there, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's one of the things I like, is like the forest and the mountains coupled with the lakes and the ponds. I'm really going to miss that.
Yes.
I camped at the Antlers. I had just come.
Oh, I remember that.
13 miles.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. 13 miles. And I had a river crossing. I had to take my shoes off. I'm like, are you kidding me? One more river crossing. I'm almost done. And the bugs were so bad. It's like the mosquitoes came on my legs like a fur blanket. And I was just livid. And I got into the Antlers campsite and was looking around, in this girl and two older men. It ended up being, I think, a father and an uncle and a daughter.
Sure.
They're like, are you solo? I said, yeah. They're like, there's one really sweet site down there on the end. So I went down there, and it was way out on the end of the spit into Joe Mary Lake.
Wow. And
then they were telling me about a place they had stayed at the night before that was not known to a lot. It's in Far Out, but it's a Maine State Public Lands, Bureau of Public Lands campsite.
Sure. Like
there was a picnic table there and everything, but there's really no trail to it. And the trail, there was a sign to the spring and the beach, and there was a big tree down on the little blue trail to the spring. But they said, keep going and push through the bushes because it's not opened up, and go down to the beach, and you'll see there's a campsite there with a picnic table. Wow. So I did that. I was the only one there. And I set my alarm for 5 o'clock to watch the sun come up on the far end.
Sure.
And I woke up a little bit early, and I hear splish, splash, splish, splash.
I know what's coming now.
Yeah, it wasn't even really daylight yet, and I could see a moose out on the corner.
Awesome.
But he turned around and went back, and I was like, darn it. So the bugs were out, those little no-see-ums. So I went back in my tent. I put on my socks and my hoodie and tied it around my face and put my gloves on. and I'm doing that, and I hear splish, splash, splish, splash. So I go out again, and he's coming my way. This beach is about 100 yards long.
Wow.
So I stood kind of next to a tree behind a little bush, and he kept coming and coming and coming. And then I had to keep wiping my face to get the bugs off, and he saw me move. So he looked at me and he turned back and I stood there and he looked at me again and he kept on coming and he walked the whole length of the beach, like 30 feet right in front of me with the rising daylight behind him. It was just gorgeous.
Did you have the presence of mind to take your camera out?
Yes. I have pictures and a little video.
Oh, how awesome. Oh, you could share that. I don't know whether you want to or not, but if you could share that with us. Have you put it on YouTube yet or anything like that?
Sure.
Oh, I'd love to put that in the show notes so people can see it. Oh, it's on Facebook. Okay. I'll check it out on Facebook.
Sure.
Great.
Yeah. And then I got to tell you, too, the next night I went to the Rainbow Lake Dam, which you can see the sunrise over Katahdin.
Right.
So a couple of young guys came and did some primitive camping, but I was the only one there. And I watched the setting sun shine against Katahdin all evening long. Like every minute it looked different. And then in the morning I had set my alarm for 5 o'clock and I could see Katahdin from my pillow through my tent opening.
You're showing off. You're showing off now, by the way, Joanne.
It was just so cool. I popped awake and I looked over and there's the red sky behind Katahdin. And I sat there for an hour and watched the sun come up over Katahdin. Wow. I couldn't have asked for anything better. It was so cool.
So you got to the Golden Road and then to Payable Bridge. That in itself is a pretty cool thing, isn't it? Just wandering across Payable Bridge with Katahdin in your face to the right.
Yeah.
Were you did you go into Millinocket or did you go straight on?
I went straight on. I didn't go to Millinocket before I summited. Yeah.
Right. And what was that like the night before? Because I know it wasn't the end of your hike, but it's such a massive moment, isn't it, going up Katahdin? So you must have felt pretty cool anyway. What were you with other people then in that area who were actually finishing their hike the next day?
Yes, there. The night that I was at the Birches, there was a group of quite a few who were finishing their full through hike.
Sure.
And there were 3 flip-floppers.
Right.
Me and a couple others who had been around each other since months and before. But so it was kind of fun listening to them reminiscing about their trips and
I'm excited. I'm just listening to you. I'm excited myself, and I mean, I know what it feels like. So, but even then, you know, even though you were halfway, it's still an awesome day. So, tell us about your Katahdin day.
Okay, so I set my alarm for 4:30, and I told Simple, who was next to me, I said, "Fair warning, I set my alarm." Got up, was out of camp at 5:30ish. And headed up and had to sign in. So like every little step is so exciting. Like I passed the ranger station and back on the trail, signed in a little box, and then did the flatlands, which was, that was just like what I had been doing.
Sure.
And then headed uphill and then got to those big boulders that I like.
just above, you come out a tree line, don't you? And suddenly you've got this wall ahead of you, haven't you?
The boulders start a little bit while you're in the trees, and then you got above tree line, and then you got some of the rebar and some of the like wedging yourself here. How can I wedge myself to get another piece of me up higher to get up through there? And that was really fun. That was longer than I anticipated. I didn't know what to expect, but that was a good long climb up over and through and around the boulders.
Yeah.
And to just look down, like I have pictures of people coming up behind me, looking straight down, and you can see them down in there. And in one of them, there's the guy is so close under, all I can see is his backpack. So the steepness is just really cool. And I like that. And
it's exciting. So you get to the tablelands, and then you kind of know you're safe, and you shouldn't be too bad from then on in. Was it a decent day? I mean, was it light by then? I presume, wasn't it?
It was pretty clear until I got up to the tablelands, and then the clouds started moving in, and then it started raining before I got up there. But it was fun to meet some of the thru-hikers coming back down after they summited.
Yes.
And each one would say, "You're almost there, not much longer." And every time I'd get a little bit emotional and go, "Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?"
And then you see it. And then you see it, don't you?
And then you see it. And then it's really emotional.
Yeah, it chokes me up just thinking about it.
Yeah. I know I'm tearing up now, but there was a small group up there waiting for two people who were behind me because they were doing a group picture. They'd done a lot of their thru-hike together.
Sure.
And so they were kind of standing around, and I got up there and I just looked at everybody. I said, "Is there a line?" You know, like my voice is all shaky. "Is there a line?" And they're like, "Nope." So I stumbled and tripped my way to the sign, and I got up on the back of it, and they took my picture. And then I said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't think I'd have to ugly cry." And this really sweet gentleman says, "It's not ugly, it's beautiful. Congratulations."
Oh, nice. How lovely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you had to come down, of course,
amazing.
which in itself is quite a challenge, isn't it? How did you find that?
Well, I wanted to go knife's edge,
Oh, did
but
you?
the weather was bad. So
Right,
I was going to go down Saddle because I was getting picked up at Roaring Brook Campground on the other side.
Right, yeah.
So I thought that the Saddle came off of the beginning of the knife's edge. So I started down the knife edge, and then I looked and I went, "Oh my God, I don't think this is the way. I don't see where a trail's coming off of this thing." So I went back up, and a gentleman who had just come up the Saddle said, "No, it's over there." So I went down there, and that was a whole a rock slide.
Yeah.
And there was a group of kids up there with hardly any clothes on, which was a little scary to me, but they were young and they were fine. But it was raining, and I got down.
Remember, Joanne, they're invulnerable. It's okay.
I know.
Nothing's going to happen to them.
Guess I was like that once.
Yeah,
but it was really nice because I got down to Chimney Pond campsite, and I went into the ranger station just to make sure what I had to do there. And I said, "Is there a place I can eat lunch, a pavilion?" And he said, "Yeah, just up the trail." And then he caught up with me a couple yards later, and he says, "You look pretty wet and cold. Do you want to come into the ranger station and eat lunch, and I'll make you coffee and you can dry out?" Nice. I was like, "Sure."
Yeah, does that work?
Oh, yeah. Dear. So then I went from Chimney Pond down to Roaring Brook.
So now you went home. You're home now. And no, this time I remembered. You're going to Iceland now. I still can't go over that you're going to Iceland, but okay, knock yourself out. When do you actually leave for Iceland?
Tomorrow at 5.
Oh my gosh! And how long will you be out there? A week?
11 days.
11 days. Wow.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to getting back on trail on the AT? I mean, not in Iceland. Are you looking forward to getting back to the AT?
Yes, I am. I actually bought my train ticket back to the trail first thing when I got home before I did any of my Iceland stuff. So
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I'm so excited to follow you for the rest of your journey, Joanne. You know, you sound like you've really enjoyed the whole thing, and having that experience in the 100-mile wilderness, and you know, you've confirmed what I felt the second time. It is not to be missed. I know you can't miss it because it's part of the trail, but just enjoy that 100-mile wilderness. And by the way, how long did it take you to get through it, or did you just not hurry?
I had a plan that I kept to, except for when I kept to the mileage plan. So it was 10 days, the 22nd
10 days
to the 31st.
And did you have a resupply?
I did have a food drop in the middle, yes.
Right,
yeah.
Cool. Well, look, that's been a fantastic account of those days. So I'm so excited. This is going to go up on tomorrow's show, and I look forward to catching up with you again when you get back. And our first conversation is going to be about Iceland, and then we'll talk about the AT again. Okay.
Sure. Thank you so much, Steve.
Have a great time. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers and bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Wow, what a great conversation about such a special part of the trail. I always love hearing from people as soon as possible after their Katahdin experience. What about waking up to a moose right outside your tent? She managed to get a 5 or 10 second clip, which I'm adding to the show notes, along with the picture of Joanne on Katahdin. Yep, I know she's got half the AT to finish after that detour to Iceland, but, well, Katahdin's Katahdin, isn't it? So the picture is going to be in the show notes as well. Before we hear from Mary Marks, now without her beloved Wiley, I wanted to make something of an announcement. As many of you know, and thanks by the way to those of you who expressed an interest in coming, our Woods Hole weekend was due to be in late September. Well, unfortunately we had to cancel it this year. We just couldn't sort out everything in time to put on a good show, so we've done what we think is best and called it off for this year. I've already informed those of you who emailed me, and I apologise once more. In thinking further about it though, I've been wondering about ways we can extend this weekend to other parts of the trail, not just Woods Hole. Perhaps 2 or even 3 times a year. If any hostels are listening to this show who can accommodate, up to 15, maybe even 20 people in a combination of camping, bunkhouse or private room, and who would like some coverage for their hostel, why don't you get in touch and we'll see what we can work out. The idea of putting on a weekend of information, classes and practical camping for a bunch of folks is very transferable, so just give it some thought and reach out to me to chat. Now let's hear from Mary Marks, who's been having the time of her life and is getting close to the sharp end of the trail. Here's Mary.
Hi, Steve.
Hey Mary, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Where are you now?
I'm in, I got off the trail at Rutland today.
Okay. You stay at the Yellow Deli?
No. I actually have a friend who lives in Wallingford, so I'm at his place.
Far better option. Far better option.
Right. I was afraid of getting recruited.
I've got to tell everybody that Mary did sent me a text message the other day with a video, and it was talking about how she was done. She was going to get off the trail, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I had this. Then I thought to myself, she's winding this up. You had that little sparkle in your eye. So, and she suddenly said, no, I can't. She said, you said, I can't keep a straight face. So you're still going. You're in Vermont. What's it like up there now?
Oh, it's beautiful. The weather's been great. A little bit of rain, but the trail is in really nice shape. There's a few muddy spots left, but the water crossings are all low. Wow. It's been great.
We need a few edited highlights, as it were. One thing Mary and I just been talking about various things that's been going on, and one of the first thing she mentioned, it wasn't the mileage, it wasn't the weather or anything like that. It was trail magic in Massachusetts. So tell us about some pretty good trail magic in Massachusetts.
Yeah, the community, the support the hikers there. Almost every road crossing, from Great Barrington, what was the next town? I mean, and on up. It was just, the support was phenomenal, how people really care for us hikers.
And it's funny, you do feel that when you're out there, don't you? I can't remember in particular states I found it was better than others necessarily, but the fact that you're still getting trail magic all the way up through Massachusetts is quite something, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I thought it would really just die off and, be gone, but it's more than ever.
Yeah. And tell us about your first and apparently last 20-mile day. First, why did you do it? And second, why wouldn't you do it again?
Well, first, I really wanted to push myself. Since I don't have Wiley, I'm able to push myself a bit farther. Mm-hmm. But to get to the shelter that I wanted to get to was that far.
Right.
And I started early, and it took me 14 and a half hours.
Wow.
And I think it's not so much the 20-mile day, it's I don't want to hike 14 and a half hours.
I agree with you. It's the time. It's the time, isn't it?
Yeah,
you spend out there. Yeah.
Time. Yes. And, it depends on the terrain and the conditions of the trail. But I just don't want to hike 14 hours a day.
Right. And so, but you did, because you got there, obviously. How did you feel? Did you feel quite accomplished at the end of it? Or do you think to yourself, I'm not bloody doing that again?
Actually, I felt great. And the next day I was fine, but it was, I don't want to do that again. But then recently I did a 17-mile day. So, that's not so bad.
You're moving on. By the way, I'm sure you're finding out from home. How's Wiley doing without you?
He's wonderful. We just FaceTimed, and of course, dogs don't. At least my dogs don't. They never were TV watchers or understand that.
Can hear your voice though.
Sound. Yeah,
can hear your voice though, surely. Yeah. Oh, that's lovely.
But he's doing great. He's fine. He's happy. He's being a lazy poodle again.
And I know that we've had some just truly historically horrific weather up there, but you said to me that Vermont actually now is a great place to be hiking. So talk to us about that. Tell us about that. How, I mean, where have you did Killington, say yesterday or the other day?
Yeah,
that takes you to 1,700 miles. How did you find that hike? It's quite a slog, isn't it, up there?
I was afraid of it the night before. I stayed at a shelter below it, and I was really intimidated by Killington, the first 4,000 peak since Virginia, probably.
Yes, definitely.
And it was actually not bad, just because it was a gradual, ascent.
Yeah, pretty endless. I found it pretty endless personally. Yes,
and then to get to the summit, you have to do that rock scramble. It's like, oh, do I really want to do this? But I did.
But the summit's not part of the trail. Summit's not part of the trail, is it?
It's not. It's not. Yeah. I was halfway up and I almost turned back, but like, nope, I might never get this opportunity again. So I went for it, and I'm so glad I did, because it was a beautiful day yesterday and got some nice pics.
I remember thinking exactly that. I might never get this opportunity again. So I said, sod it, I'm not doing it.
You didn't do it?
No, certainly not. Yeah, it's not on the trail. I ain't doing it, I tell you. If I've got 2,200 miles to go, another 2 or 3 will kill me. So no, right. I didn't do it. And you stayed at some pretty cool places. You stayed at the Upper Goose Pond shelter, which is a pretty great place. Tell everybody about that.
The Upper Goose Pond cabin, it's a totally enclosed cabin. They have caretakers. It's, of course, on a pond. That they have a canoe that you can use to row anywhere you want, and there's a little island out on the pond.
Nice.
They cook you breakfast in the morning. Pancakes, sausage, hot coffee. Oh, it was just so lovely, and it's all volunteers.
Yes, yeah.
All volunteers.
It's another one of those great examples of a place that kind of gets its own mystique, doesn't it? You go there, you're looking forward to it because you've heard about it, and it always beats expectations. For me, it did both times. I loved it there. I think it was a great place to be. And also, you went to the Cookie Ladies. I wasn't sure she was still doing that. I mean, did you stay nearby? Did you stay there?
I stayed in her yard. Yeah,
all right.
And she has a blueberry farm. Pick your own blueberries.
That's right. Yeah.
So, someone picked a bowl of blueberries just for the hikers.
Right.
And then I was the only one that stayed that night. But she came out about 6 o'clock and said, "Hey, Poppins, would you like a salad with your dinner?" And
nice.
I'm like, yes, thank you. And right from her garden. Everything was from her garden. It was just lovely.
How beautiful. And not only did you stay there, you stayed at the top of Mount Greylock. And the top of Mount Greylock itself is fabulous, isn't it? The view you get from the top there. And I just think it's another one of those iconic, perhaps less reported spots. It's a great place to be. But you actually stayed there as well. What have they got there? A little hotel, or what actually is it? Or just rooms?
It's a cabin that was built by the CCC back in the 30s.
Oh, crikey. So
there's a lodge. And then they also have a hiker's bunk room.
Oh, right.
And a restaurant where you can, they have a meal time, set meal time. The bunk room, there were 10 of us in there. And, but the monument itself, it lights up at nighttime like a lighthouse. It
beautiful.
Is beautiful. Yeah, it was just lovely.
You're definitely experiencing the whole trail, aren't you? You're taking your time, but you're definitely getting there now. You're now 1,700 miles, so you've got less than 500 to go. Have you passed the 500 miles to go spot? You must have done.
I did.
And you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, just 500 miles to go. 500 miles is a long way.
It is, but in the big picture, it's not,
Oh, no,
But we're starting to pass a lot of Sobos.
Yeah.
And people on the long trail. So that has been a lot of fun, just meeting up with and passing the Sobos that are just so excited, just getting to 500 miles. And, you can remember how you felt when you did your first 500 miles.
Yeah, but Mary, their 500 miles are tougher than our first 500 miles.
Yeah, they got the hard part done.
Yeah, these guys have been through. But you know what? This is what you've been doing this for. You've been doing this for months and months now. So you're ready to, whatever's going to hit you next, you're ready for it. And you're going to glory in it because it's absolutely awesome. It's the icing on the cake, what you're coming to now. So you've loved it already. You're going to love it even more, I tell you.
I think I am. I'm a little intimidated by New Hampshire, I'll be finishing up Vermont in the next few days. So yeah, I'm ready to hit New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
think I'll be fine though.
I think you'll be fine as well. Well, look, it's lovely to talk to you again, and lovely that you're still tootling along. You know, you're the one who was, despite your video to me the other day, which was distinctly annoying. I might actually put it in the show notes, maybe if I can transfer it. Yeah. Well, look, good to talk to you, and keep on going. And when you get into New Hampshire, tell us about Moosaluk when you get there. All right.
I certainly will.
Okay then. Speak to you soon, Mary.
Thanks, Steve.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye. She's definitely taken in the sights, isn't she? I met Mary last year at Woods Hole, and her determination shone through even then. She clearly worked out a plan, and she is executing it perfectly right now, living her best life. And now that dreadful weather has passed, I'm betting that Mary's glad that she's getting to Vermont now instead of a couple of weeks ago. Let's hope the weather stays good for her, and of course, all our class members still out there. Now, the spooky moment. Oh dear. A couple of weeks ago, I was recording Mary, not for this interview, the one before, and I suddenly heard what I thought was a voice. When I'm recording, I have the door to my office closed, and I shout at everybody in the house to be quiet for a few minutes. Well, Mary and I were talking when I heard somebody talking behind me. I looked around, so clear was this voice. I couldn't understand what's being said, and of course I couldn't see anybody there, but I definitely heard something. Anyway, long story short, I carried on with the interview, and I've now stripped out and increased the volume of that voice. I took it out of the recording, of course, and kept it, intending to enhance the sound to work out what was being said. Here it is.
Wow. My day just went from great to absolutely perfect.
I hope you heard that. It said, which is a great line, by the way, my day just went from great to absolutely perfect. Here it is again.
Wow. My day just went from great to absolutely perfect.
No idea who it was, where it came from, or, well, I just can't explain it. Did I accidentally hit my iPhone and initiate something? I just don't know. In the meantime, though, I'm going with being haunted. How's about them apples? Oh, dear. Now, back to reality. One of our walking wounded, whose hike was looking tenuous to say the least, last time we spoke. Here's Ron Ward, or Red. Well, we're back on with a certain amount of inevitability, I'm afraid, with Red, or Ron Ward. Hey, Red, how are you?
I'm good, Mighty Blue. How are you?
And I'm good, thanks. And you can hear the quality of the sound is better than it normally is when we're on the trail. So you're actually at home still, and your efforts to recover haven't gone quite as well as you'd hoped. So tell us where you were when we last speak. I think that was in the middle of June. And where you are now.
Well, I'm back home, and I've been back home since late June. I think I got home maybe the 20th or something like that.
Right.
And immediately, following the MRIs and doctor's visits that I'd had while I was still in Virginia, I had some follow-ups with my local sports medicine clinic here, some great people. And we decided that I would, I would follow their recommendation and
Sure.
be non-weight bearing, no hiking, no real walking for distance for about 8 weeks, and that's a cumulative 8 weeks. So that would have gotten me to the end of July. Following which would
okay,
be,
so you should be starting again this week.
Yeah, I know. And I'm leaving. Amtrak's picking me up later. Had an MRI last week, and the following day read the results, and it's just not improving. It's not healing, as fast as we had hoped that it would. And,
have you been looking after it? Keeping it off, not being load bearing at all. It just isn't healing for any reason.
The MRI just doesn't look any different than the one in early June. And the doctors say, and I've had multiple surgeons look at it, and a couple different radiologists read it actually, and they all sort of concur that in stress fracture situations, when you're not just completely immobilized, it takes 6 months, something like that for that kind of thing to heal up. Now, I don't walk for any distance. I'm not on crutches, but I'm not walking around for exercise or anything like that. I am riding my bike, but that's a low impact or no impact. I do some swimming, that sort of thing. And this was all, as was prescribed, but I'm just not sure that there's anything that anybody could do to remedy this kind of fracture in any length of time that would get me back on trail this year. So made the decision with those physicians and family and friends that, hey, I can, trail will be there next year or the year after, and hopefully I will too. So, we'll just get back at it then. And so for now, it's, it's over.
It's always sad when that happens, obviously, and different people have had different experiences this year with it working out for them and others not working out for them. It shows the somewhat arbitrary nature of this, doesn't it? How you can just true. one thing can happen and you're injured. Other people can fall over 50 times and not get injured. It's quite remarkable. So I'm encouraged that you say, the trail will still be there next year. Obviously it will be, and the year after as well. Are you thinking that you would go back and finish what you've done from the point you left it, or is it still burning within you to do the whole thing in one calendar year?
Well, it really does burn within me to do it all in one calendar year. However, I am open to section hikes or lash or something like that. I mean, which is essentially what I've accomplished, a little over 600 miles. Yeah. So. It depends on time commitments and, that sort of thing. Who knows what will happen between now and the end of the year. I'm kind of ramping up professionally on some other things. And just by necessity, I'm going to go nuts just sitting here staring out the window, wishing I was, in Vermont somewhere, but harnessing that energy and time and effort into, what I want to do next professionally is kind of where I'm focusing right now. So we'll see.
This impacts people differently, Ron. Some people just, okay, let's get on with the next thing. Let's do what's next. But for some people, they can't let it go, and so you have to get that balance right within yourself, because this is definitely an itch that you're going to need to scratch it, aren't you, at some stage, in whatever form that is. But
and I've had a good bit of time to stew on this, so it's not like I got injured 3 weeks ago and it's all fresh. So I've kind of been dealing with the, what happens if this comes back, negative, these results come back the way I don't want it. So I've, sort of mentally prepared myself for if I get great results, then I'm out. I'm out of here. See ya. If what happened happens, then I'll just move on to the next thing.
So are you, do you still think about the trail most days?
I dream about it a lot.
This range.
Telling my wife the other night that the other morning, it was Saturday or Sunday morning, I said, I had this weird dream. It's like the last dream you have is the one you remember, right, through the night.
Sure.
And I couldn't find something. It was in my bottom of my pack and the rest of the group. And, I walked alone most of the time, but for some reason I was trying to hurry up, get out of camp. And it was just that I can't find this thing. And so I have dreams like that. I think about when I'm outside, I think a lot about the trail, the sights, sounds, smells. Where I live right now, the cicadas are just going wild. And so you can hear them all throughout the evening, especially in the late afternoon and dusk. I had a bird that kind of got himself caught or herself caught in my garage the other day when I was out there, piddling around doing something, and I spent an hour trying to get it to just calm down and like light on something. And it made me really think about how close to nature I was for the amount of time that I was out there. It's just magical. And people that I talk to, are so interested in, the daily life and what was that like? And, so I feel like I have some of those stories.
But remember that, Ron, they soon won't be.
What's that?
They soon won't be. They're going to want you to get on with it. With things.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you clearly have fond memories of the trail. So it's been a positive experience for you, despite the disappointment of how it's finished. Because seeing you out there, I met you out there. You were living your life. You were just looking so well and so happy and just enjoying the whole thing. So that's got to be a positive thing to take away.
Yeah, it's a real positive thing to take away, and I'm sure that there will be other positive things that will surface, that will kind of come to my mind soon. That maybe I didn't think about, and there's some lessons that you take with you whenever you do something like this, or that's what you do it for.
The sad thing is, funny enough, nearly every example of something that comes up in life, you'll have an example from the trail to say, well, I remember I was on the trail, this and this, and everybody will get fed up with that eventually, but it's okay, it's all good.
Yeah, that's all right. They can always walk away.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm so glad we had the opportunity to meet. I'm glad we had the opportunity to have you on the show, because you've been a blessing to the show. It's been so fun to catch up with you, and all the time you were doing great. And then this is disappointing now, I know, but I appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about what's happened, and hopefully you get back on next year and you'll let us know then.
Well, I hope so too. And just from from personal perspective, I want to thank you and any listeners that were, that have been following along. I know you have a great audience with the podcast, and I wish that all well. And I'm going to continue to be an avid listener and supporter of it. But I was sitting in this same chair in this exact same room in December when you and I had our first conversation. Right. And I was so nervous because I was so doubtful about, can I do this? Am I up to it? Do I have it in me? Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, yes, and yes is the answer. Over the course of 6 months now, I've come to believe, you put your mind to something and you got enough determination, barring lightning strike, stumbling over some stupid route or just having bad luck. Yeah. But I'm also the kind of person who believes that stuff happens for a reason. So, perhaps there's something that I've taken away from this experience that will, get me somewhere, somehow down the road, get me back to the trail. And I believe that firmly, and I look forward to, maybe trying to do it again next year.
Okay, buddy. Well, we'll certainly catch up then anyway, and just to see how you're going next year. But just stay in touch, all right?
Will do.
Okay, my friend. Take it easy, okay?
Thank you.
I've been lucky enough to personally meet quite a few of our class members this year, and Ron was a great example of the spirit of the trail. We met in Damascus at Trail Days. His wife had come to visit, and Ron was a happy man indeed. He would have been one of my favourites to finish, so confident and capable did he seem. Yet, as often happens, luck just wasn't having it, and Ron had to go home. We stayed in touch, and I thought our conversation just now epitomised Ron's grace and demeanour, even after the bitter disappointment of having to call it for this year. As he said, he can always go next year, and he can. I hope that he does. Just before we hear from Jessica Lang-Wright, I wanted to remind you that there's a microphone on our hikingradionetwork.com website on all pages where you can leave a message of about 2 minutes in length. And I thought it might be an idea to open it up to you for questions, any questions you'd like to ask, and I'll do my best to play them on the show and answer them, of course. So try it out. Now, here's Jessica Lang-Wright.
Hello.
Hey, Jessica, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. So we haven't spoken for quite a while. I don't know whether there wasn't convenient time or something, but it was quite a long while ago. And I seem to think you were in Roanoke because you had to hole up for a couple of days, didn't you?
Yes, I think we were. Yep.
Right. So where are you now?
I am in Harper's Ferry.
Oh, wow. How nice. Oh.
I'm actually in the ATC headquarters right now.
Oh, how cool is that? Have you had your picture taken?
Yes, I did.
That's pretty cool, isn't it? Hey, so how's it going so far?
It's going pretty well. Took way longer to get here than I had hoped, but the heat and humidity have been pretty brutal lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, though? Had you been further forward, you would have had the horrendous weather in the north. So
right.
That's one way to look at it, I guess, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Yeah, the flooding up in the New England has been amazing.
And you actually said in one, you sent me this message. You said you were seriously about to quit. Was it so draining then, the heat?
Yes, I have fully come to terms with the fact that I have been taken hold of by New England in the last 10 years, and I cannot handle the heat and humidity down here. Especially in things like the roller coaster when it was so hot. Yeah, I was pretty brutal.
And last time we spoke, Mike was having trouble. So what's going on with him?
So we left Roanoke and kept going, and he's managing things, still trucking.
Right, still trucking as well. How about that? And I'm looking at these notes you sent me, and I'm sorry for being late getting back to you. I've just been to physical therapy, where, funnily enough, my physical therapist, I've turned her on to the Mighty Blue show. She said she was listening to you talking about your sleeping bag, the minus 20 degree one. That was hilarious.
So now I'm the total other direction, because I went from I was thinking of that the other day. It's like in Georgia when I started, it got down to like, I don't even know what the wind chills were, but the temperatures were down around 15 degrees. And then yesterday, coming into Harper's Ferry, the heat index was well over 100.
Oh, my gosh.
That's horrendous. It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
And you says that you met somebody that you've met somebody somewhere before on the trail in a hostel unexpectedly in Glasgow. So who was that?
Yeah. So last summer, as part of my trying to decide if I wanted to do a thru hike, I spent about 6 weeks working at the Notch Hostel in New Hampshire.
Right.
Shout out to the Notch. And while I was there, this guy named Hutch came through. And unfortunately, the day I met him, he was pretty upset because a friend of his that he had been hiking with passed away. Was one of the things that, last year, I think people probably heard about. This guy fell in the Connecticut River and drowned.
Wow.
Yeah. So, everybody was pretty shook up about that when we heard about it. But Hutch actually knew the guy. So we kind of spent some time together, me just being an ear for him. And so here I am doing my thru hike, and I walk out of Sanibels in Glasgow after taking a shower onto the patio, and who's standing there but Hutch, who's finishing his hike from last year.
Oh, how cool.
It was just one of those moments of like, wait, I know you. How do I know you? And once we figured it out, it was like, oh my gosh.
And it's that serendipity of the trail, isn't it? It happens so much.
It's crazy. Yeah. But it was such a cool moment. And we ended up hiking together for a few days.
Real nice.
Yeah.
And you've given me one of the best Shenandoah tallies I've seen. 1 bear, 2 rattlesnakes, and 4 milkshakes. So the milkshakes are winning right now, are they?
That was my whole goal through Shenandoah, was to keep the milkshakes tally higher than the rattlesnakes, and I succeeded. So I was pretty proud of that.
So in Shenandoah, did you enjoy it there, by the way? I personally enjoyed it. You don't get many great views, but I really enjoyed hiking in Shenandoah because it was relatively easy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, the waysides were certainly a highlight for sure, not having to carry as much food. And I probably carried more than I needed to because being vegetarian, I wasn't exactly sure what they were going to have for me, but at least the food bag was lighter than it typically would have been for that long a stretch. You said, it was nice. I mean, it was definitely a better experience than I had in the Smokies. So, yeah.
So, your smokers experience is one for the ages, I'm afraid. You had a tough time there, but you know what? Yeah. You're one of our few class of 23 members still going, which is fantastic. And you're now in Harper's Ferry, as you say, and sort of somewhat ominously, you said you're taking some time off now to decide your next move. Is that because you're thinking how you can keep this going or to get to Katahdin in time? What's the plan?
Well, I mean, there isn't quite a plan just yet. And that's part of what I'm trying to figure out. So I'm having a real hard time with the heat, and I don't think I can keep hiking when it's like this.
Right. Wow.
I've had some heat rash that hasn't gone away for weeks at this point that I'm trying to deal with. And it's just absolutely brutal when you are soaking wet in sweat from the time you start packing your bag in the morning to the time you stop moving at night.
Sure.
So my dad is actually on the way here. My parents live in New York, about an hour and a half from Bear Mountain, where the trail crosses through New York.
Right.
I'm going to go. I also haven't seen them since January. I was supposed to see them before I left, and I ended up being sick, and all these things happened, and I haven't seen them in quite some time. So I'm going to go visit them for a couple of days and then try to decide what I'm doing next. I think that's going to involve flipping up to somewhere in New England. Where is still the question in my mind.
Well, you've got to be careful.
Flooding and stuff.
Yeah, you've got to be careful with all that flooding, obviously, as well. But you're certainly, it should be a bit cooler up there, shouldn't it? I presume.
Yeah, I mean, I did check temperatures in various places, and it's at least 10 to 15 degrees cooler than it is in this area. Yeah.
You sound like you're not enjoying it, obviously, with this heat, I presume. Are you still enjoying the hike, though?
It's been tough. Yeah, it's
meant to be.
Been a real struggle.
Jessica, it's meant to be, isn't it? You knew it was going to be tough. So if it wasn't tough, everybody would do it. So the fact is you're doing it, and there are lots of different ways to do this. And if the way in which you manage your hike will be a big factor in whether or not you finish your hike. And if to manage your hike and make it work is to go up north, a little bit further north, and then come back when you finish Katahdin, then you should do that. Or even go up to Payable Bridge, then come back and fill in, and then finish at Katahdin. But I don't think you've probably I suspect you won't have the time to do that if you carried straight on from where you are to Katahdin. So it's now July 28th we're talking, and you will start running out of time, I suspect, eventually.
Yeah, I don't think straight through is going to happen. And like we talked about the last time, it's still a bit of a bitter pill for me to swallow, but it's the reality of the situation.
And how does Mike feel about this? Is he going to carry on from here, or what's he going to do?
He's trying to make some decisions too.
Right.
He's not sure. He's talking about possibly flipping straight to Katahdin and just walking south and finishing here in Harper's Ferry.
It's not a bad place to finish. Not a bad place to finish. And I'll tell you what, you've got the easiest finish in the world if you can finish at Harper's Ferry, because that C&O Canal path is easy.
Flat as a pancake.
It's flat as a pancake.
Before, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of worth doing. Well, look, make your decisions, obviously, but make them, in the cold light of day, because you're not going to be happy if you give up on this. So just manage it the way you want to manage it best, and just let me know when you've done it, and we'll perhaps talk again about that as well.
Sounds good.
All right, Jessica. Good to talk to you. Okay.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Blimey, she's having a tough old time, isn't she? I think her best option, even though it's not going to be a north to south through hike, is going to be to flip up north to improve the conditions for her, as well as making sure she gets Katahdin done in time. Then she can head back to Harper's Ferry. I saw a post she made recently that asked for suggestions on that theme, ending it with, "Quitting is not an option." So that was positive. Well, and this, by the way, is a bit of an afterthought I'm adding in now, she'd obviously thought more about it, and I can tell you that she and I and Mike are on their way north as we speak. Next time she and I speak, she's going to be a lot happier, I'm sure. Thanks as ever this week to our wonderful donors, with recurring donors Justin Mullins, Kevin Eastman, Small World IFT, you're just going to have to tell me your name, Small World, Ann Dobson and Mike DiCello, plus generous contributions from Beth Bacastenium and Venus Spalding. Thanks so much to you all. Last one today is Bryan Robbins. And, well, we haven't heard from Bryan for a while. He's got quite a story to tell, though. Here's Bryan. Okay, now, we haven't heard from him from a while, but he and I have actually stayed in touch by text. This is Bryan Robbins. Hey, Bryan, how are you?
Hey, Steve, Mighty Blue.
And now I know you're off trail. We've kept in touch via text. Firstly, how far did you get? I mean, you started on April the 6th, and how far did you actually get on trail?
I was in the Shenandoahs.
Right.
I got picked up by my son for a family visit.
Sure.
Picked me up at Thornton Gap.
Yep.
Somewhere around 9:40 something. And
right.
And it was a planned family visit. My wife was flying up from Mississippi, and my daughter was flying up from Texas. It was the July 4th week.
Sure.
And the plan was to visit with family and then do some slack packing
sure.
up there around the Carlisle area. And that night is when the stuff started happening with me not feeling well.
So, I mean, you've said, I've got your messages, and there's so many things that seem to have been going on with you, but there's still no diagnosis a month after this happened. What did it feel like? So were you with the family when this happened?
Right. It started with just an upper GI thing. You know, one of the things I loved about the trail and going into towns is I might be eating ramen while I'm in camp, but when I'd get into town, I would love the fact of just eating.
Yeah, could eat like condemned men, don't you, when you get into town?
Right. I had no problem with that before, and this upper GI thing came, and I've had GERD or heartburn plenty of times before, but this was something else. It kept me in a hotel for like 3 days.
Wow.
Pain, and that's when the weakness and the lightheadedness started, when I was dealing with that upper GI thing. That upper GI thing cleared after a few days,
sure.
But the weakness and the lightheadedness continued.
So is that continuing? Is that because you've been now off trail then for about a month, and you're back home in Mississippi now, and you've had all sorts of labs. Is that the fatigue and the lightheadedness? Does that still continue as well?
That has continued. I've been to 2 urgent cares. I had a blackout spell and went to the emergency room, spent a day in emergency room. And now that I'm home, I've been to my own doctor, and
sure.
Tons of tests. Lyme disease has come back negative twice, and the other tick test. And all my labs so far have all came back normal. I start a cardiac regimen starting actually today. I go and have an echocardiogram, and then I meet with a cardiologist coming up in a week or 2.
But how you feel like now? Even if they gave you clearance, how you feel right now? You couldn't hike, could you?
No, I've tried. When I was still, I spent a couple of weeks up at my son's after my wife flew back, and I stayed at my son's, and I tried doing slack packs, and I even tried just walking in town, and I'd have to practically almost lay on a bench in town.
Jeez.
So the last time I communicated with you, I was hiking from Carlisle to Duncannon, and
yes.
That was a bad spell that day. I had to lay on a rock for about an hour and a half to feel better. And I'll think that I'm okay, and then it'll come on me. And I've done stuff now. I have a home like EKG thing that I've been checking, and I'm not real convinced it's even my heart. So,
well, in many ways, it'd be a good thing if it wasn't your heart, anyway. But but then you want to know what it is. And I think one of the striking things from your text was you said the day before this hit me, I felt strong as an ox.
Yeah,
so you were going well. Did anything happen that day before? I mean, I'm not trying to diagnose you over the phone, but did anything happen that day before?
Well, I stayed at an actual campground in the I don't remember the name of it, in the Shenandoahs, and I ate their camp food, and I ate it heavy, and I remember feeling nauseous that night, but it went away the next morning, and the next day I thought I was hungry, and it ended up being that upper GI. I didn't even know that was coming on, and when I was with my wife, I ate really heavy, but beside that, no, nothing. You know, I never pulled off an engaged tick. So for two negative, it really acts like Lyme disease, but two negative tick tests and no rash, and I didn't pull off an engaged tick. But you know, they put me on antibiotic while I was up there in Pennsylvania, the main antibiotic for it, and I had a very negative reaction to that. Ended up getting hives all over my body, and so now I'm on a second antibiotic, even though there's no diagnosis yet. I just try to attack it with a different antibiotic.
It's fun, you know, it's not funny, but it's strange that in this really advanced medical world, they don't know what's wrong with you. I find that just amazing to me. And I've got to tell listeners, Bryan was reluctant to come on initially, but he said out of respect to our listeners and the show, he'd come on. But I can tell how down you feel about it. If you're still hoping to get back out there, because it came on so suddenly, it may well be they sorted it out so suddenly. If you can get back on this year, do you think that you would get back on this year or not?
Well, you can see my video. I haven't shaved yet. I told my wife once she sees that I shaved, I've given up getting back on this year. But you know, it has messed with my head a lot. But yeah, I really would like to get back on the trail. It was at the point to where, you know, I really was feeling my groove, and so it's hard.
Yeah, but let's say you can't get them back on this year, but they do resolve the issue and so on. Are you one and done? Would this be it? Or would you think start fresh and go again next year, or go from where you got to? Or what would you do? Or would you even consider going again next year? Assuming they resolve this.
I haven't decided yet, but I don't think I'd start over. I think I would finish at the lash and maybe break it up over a couple of years, and then do the other half. That was right at 1,000 miles between what I did before I got picked up and I don't know, from Pine Grove up to Don Cannon. I was doing slack packs. I was right at 1,000 miles.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bryan. Firstly, thank you for coming on and sharing this story, because I want people to know this. While we often say this is not nothing, this is tough. The fact that you've had something happen to you, the only reason you're off. You know, and stuff happens all the time on the trail, and it happens to have got you. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing that story. And secondly, I just hope the most important thing. I mean, the hike's a hike, the trail's the trail. You can come back, you may come back, you may not come back. But your health is way more important. So I'm glad you're where you should be and getting yourself sorted out. But please stay in touch and let us know what happens, okay?
All right. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Okay, buddy. Well, good talk to you, okay?
All right.
Speak to you soon. Cheers, bye. So it looks like Bryan's done for this year, though he's holding out a little hope that he'll get back on. As I say, Bryan wasn't mad keen on doing an interview because he didn't think he had anything to say, but he did it. So thanks for that, Bryan. Get well soon, mate. Now, I told you we don't have a reading today, but I wanted to recognise the passing of one of my fellow members of the class of 2019. I only knew him as Peach. He was hiking with his father, Gopher, and the two of them were a wonderful pair. Peach was, I believe, a botanist, a love of nature he'd inherited from his father, he told me. We spent an evening camping together just below Beauty Spot, and in fact, we went up with another couple of hikers to watch the sunset at Beauty Spot, a thing I recommend anybody does while they're out there. The following day, we climbed Unaka Mountain together, and, well, he and his dad were great company. I heard just the other day from Tailgater, another of our 2019 class members. Tailgater, or Holly, let me know that Peach had died in a car crash. How sad. Rest in peace, brother. It was a privilege to share the trail with you and your dad. I'll see you next week.